All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about maybe the single most important part of any academic paper, the introduction. Seriously, it's not just a warm-up. It's basically the gatekeeper that decides if you get published or not. Today, we're going to break down exactly how to write one that grabs an editor's attention and just refuses to let go. So ask yourself this. When an editor picks up your paper, are you handing them a crystal clear roadmap that leads them straight to your brilliant research? Or are you tossing them into a confusing maze of disconnected ideas? Because let's be honest, a confusing intro is pretty much a one-way ticket to the rejection pile. And that's the hard truth, you know? Editors are incredibly busy. They use that introduction to judge the quality, the clarity, and the entire potential of your manuscript. If your argument doesn't feel solid and compelling right from page one, they might not even bother reading the rest. Yeah, it's that important. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start with why the intro is so critical. Then we'll cover a simple 4-step funnel, talk about engaging with the literature, how to pinpoint that research gap, stating your aim, and finally, how to pass what we're calling the editor's test. You want to know this secret to a fantastic introduction? It's all about structure. We're calling it the 4-step funnel, and it's basically your blueprint for guiding any reader logically from a big, broad topic right down to the specific, sharp point of your study. And here are those 4 steps. You start wide with the broad context. Then you narrow down to the state of the art. You get even more specific by identifying the research gap, and you finish with the sharpest point, your aim and contribution. This funnel shape isn't just a neat idea. It's the exact logical flow that editors are looking for. Okay, let's start at the very top of that funnel. The first couple of steps are all about setting the stage. This is where you place your research within the larger scholarly conversation and prove that you've really done your homework before you try to add something new. So for step 1, the broad context, you need to clearly define your field and, crucially, explain why anyone should care. Why does this matter? Is it a hot debate in academia? Does it have wider societal relevance? And whatever you do, please avoid those super generic textbook-like openings. Be specific and show how your work fits perfectly with the journal you're sending it to. Now, check this out, because this is probably the single biggest mistake people make. Do not just list your sources like a laundry list. Smith found this and then Jones found that. Instead, you need to synthesize the literature. Group the ideas together by theme or concept. This way, you're not just making a list, you're telling a story, like one major school of thought argues for X, but a competing perspective points to Y. That shows you're actually analyzing, not just reading. Then comes step 2, the state of the art. This is where you really show you know your stuff. You've got to engage with high-quality, peer-reviewed sources, and that means including both the foundational, classic studies and the absolute latest research. You're trying to highlight the key theories and debates your work is jumping into. All right, now we get to what is, without a doubt, the most important part of your entire introduction, pinpointing the research gap. After you've shown what's already known, you create that so what moment. This is the whole justification for why your study needs to exist in the first place. And look, the source material couldn't be clearer about this. It calls a clear research gap a central requirement. In other words, it's totally non-negotiable. Without that gap, your paper has no real purpose. You're not just adding to the conversation, you're filling a specific important hole in what we know. So, how do you find a gap? Well, you can look for a few things. Are there parts of a topic that are just underexplored? Are there findings that different researchers totally disagree on? Or maybe past studies had some methodological flaws that you can fix. Or maybe the existing research is just incomplete. Any of those is your opening. And this is absolutely crucial. You can't just announce that your work is original out of thin air. You have to prove it using the literature you just reviewed as evidence. You have to show, based on what's already out there, exactly where that hole is. Just claiming your work is new without any support, that's a huge red flag for any editor. So, we've made it to the bottom of the funnel. You've set the context. You've reviewed the literature. You've identified the gap. Now it's time to bring it all home with a clear, direct, and powerful statement about your study's purpose and its contribution. Think of your final paragraph as a checklist. You've got to clearly state your overall aim. You have to spell out the specific research questions you're going to answer. You need to specify exactly what your contribution is. Is it theoretical, empirical? And make absolutely sure that all of this lines up perfectly with the rest of your paper. So, you've written your intro using this funnel method. Great. But before you even think about hitting that submit button, let's run it through one last check, the editor's test.
These are pretty much the exact things they'll be looking for when they evaluate your work.
This table really breaks it down nicely. Your paper needs clear positioning, right? That's so it aligns with the journal. Your engagement with literature has to be analytical to show you've mastered the field. The research gap has to be explicit. That's what justifies your whole study. Your aim needs to directly tackle that gap. And finally, your contribution must be clearly articulated so the editor immediately gets why your paper is so valuable. And last but not least, a few final polishing tips to get you over the finish line. Watch your tone, keep it precise and academic. Remember to back up any claims of novelty with actual evidence. Use your citations to build your argument, not just to prove you've read things. And above all, be consistent with your terms and your focus from the first word to the last. These little details, they make a world of difference. So next time you sit down to write, don't think of the introduction as just a summary or some chore you have to get through. Think of it as the opening chapter of a compelling story. A story that masterfully guides your reader from what is known to what is unknown, and then finally to the unique and valuable contribution that only your research can make. So, what story will you tell?